Within the All the Mods 9 mod pack, there are multiple grindy mods to conquer before getting to the All the Mods star and crafting creative mode items. One of these mods is the Productive Bees mods. Ordinarily, I would have split this video into multiple videos, but frankly I've had this footage sitting around for almost 3 months and I want to get back to playing the pack. So all that I've done within Productive Bees are in this episode, from the beginnings all the way to obtaining bees that make the tier 3 All the Mods or Unobtainium. I am Bedrock Burger, your local Stormcloak supremacist. This one's gonna be a bit long, and I jump around a lot, so sit back, relax, subscribe, and enjoy the video. To start off this leg of the journey, I crafted myself an All-the-Modium sword. I didn't have that much netherite at the moment to dupe the All-the-Modium template, so I just hard-crafted it, making plates and rods out of the All-the-Modium ingots to make the sword. I then quickly began the grind of the Productive Bees mod by making a quartz nest, which could attract a crystalline bee if I used quartz on it. It would pop out after a whopping 20 minutes unless I used more of the attracting material on it, but I was running really low on quartz, so I just waited. While I wait, allow me to explain the mod. Essentially, this is a mod where bees make various materials. It's kind of like mystical agriculture, but instead of seeds, it's bees. There's bees for quite a lot in-game, from wood to stone to diamonds and more. To obtain the bees, you breed various types together. For example, to get a lapis bee, you would breed a blue banded bee and a redstone bee. Not sure how it works, but it just does. The bees produce a comb after they spend time spinning in a circle on a block of their respective material that, when put through a centrifuge, has a chance to produce the material or ore of the corresponding bee type. Each bee has productivity levels that depend on how you breed them, from low productivity to very high productivity. Breed 2 bees with high productivity, get a child with high productivity. It's bee eugenics. Radical! With all this explained in a very quick manner, let's resume the bee adventure. A crystalline bee popped out of the hive and I nabbed it with a bee cage. I then crafted an advanced beehive, which was a better beehive that could be upgraded. You can see the bees inside by right-clicking on it. I needed an area to house my bee experiments, so I started to build, expanding up what I had done a few episodes ago. I had the floor, just no walls or ceiling. With a bit more of it done, I took an extra crystalline bee I had, as I did make more of course, and used a block of prosperity shards on it to turn it into a Prosperibee, whose combs could be processed to make prosperity shards from mystical agriculture mod. It was a high priority bee at the time, as I did need a lot of shards to 100% this pack, investment for future burger problems. I also then made a feeding slab to help with keeping the bees close so they don't wander off. I could put it in front of the hive and put a bee flowering material inside it, up to 3 different materials so they could flower on the slab instead of needing the block placed in world. With the slab, I could have up to 3 different bee types flowering on a single slab. I then crafted a centrifuge to process the combs I had made so far. The regular centrifuges are super slow, so I made a powered centrifuge which went faster. I hooked it up to an ender gate at first, but I would swap that ender gate later, you'll see. To get a bunch of honey, I went around catching regular bees. They could also go into the mod's hives and use feeding slabs. I needed the honey for honey treats, among other things, which was the material used for a lot of Productive Bees functions, including growing child bees and attracting new bees to a few various overall nests. I would need so much of it. I didn't know at first, but there is a villager who can actually sell honey treats, but I do learn it later after a Google search. I then crafted a few stations from the mod, including a bottler, which both bottled honey for me and allowed me to squish bees with a piston to bottle their genes. It's fine, it's ethical squishing. These genes could be centrifuged and then put into a gene indexer, which automatically combine these genes together. Each gene has a percent associated with it, which when combined with a honey trait, allowed you to give that trait to other bees. The chance that is displayed on the gene is the likelihood for the bee to adopt the gene. The indexer combined the percents to get it up to a max of 100%. It's handy when trying to get the highest productivity or high enough. There is a weird hoop to jump through to get to very high productivity, which I really don't feel like doing. High productivity is good enough for me. I also then made the breeding chamber, which I could use to breed the bees to make new bees. The issue is that some materials just don't have bees. Wither stars don't have bees, draconium from Draconic Evolution does not, and even Alf Steel doesn't, which is a bummer. I waited and crafted draconium seeds from Draconic Evolution, so when I eventually got to that mod, I'd be set. Each material that doesn't have a bee, I'd make seeds for or use other mods to obtain a material. Mostly mystical agriculture though. To resume the bee mod, I captured an ashy mining bee, which was used to breed up several needed bees. I crafted a bee incubator, which artificially grew child bees into adults using honey treats. Without speed upgrades, it took absolutely forever to do. But with it crafted, I was able to start growing the iron bees I just finished breeding up. Their combs made iron ore, which I could do a whole processing setup for, but I'm lazy. To give it all power, I swapped from end gates to wind turbines from Mechanism. This setup used a hilariously low amount of power, so 2 turbines was actually enough. To get more honey treats, I leveled up a beekeeper villager, saw if it had treats at its 2nd level, tossed it if it didn't, then repeated until I finally got one. Only took about 15 villagers, don't ask what happened to the others. To get fully immersed into my new bee life, I crafted beekeeper armor from Thermal series. I wanted it as vanity as the actual stats were pretty doo-doo. On the path to diamond bees, I needed the slimy bee, which could be found in swamps. I used a nature's compass to find one a mere few thousand blocks away. So my journey began. When I arrived at the swamp, I found a few slimy nests with said slimy bees inside, so I nabbed the nest and brought them home and whacked them with a stick to get the bees out. I need another bee to get my diamonds though, and that was an ender bee, found only in the end. My motivation for killing the ender dragon was a bee. Yep. Just like my Skyblock series where my motivation was prosperity shards, this motivation is for a bee. The dragon went down without much issue, save for the really annoying Gulper Endermen that teleport you. But into the gateway with more bee cages I went. I grabbed a number of ender bees, then returned home, immediately going right to the nether with a glowing nest to get a glowstone bee, as I also needed that to get along the chain to diamond bees. I also spawned a blue banded bee, then bred up some redstone bees, using the incubator to grow them up. They flowered on redstone blocks and made combs that centrifuge into redstone. I would need a lot of redstone, so I would need a lot of redstone bees. I also bred up a lapis bee to make some lapis. Lower priority, but needed to get diamond bees. To take a small 5-minute break from bees, I hardwired my power setup to everything that needed power, which wasn't a whole lot, honestly. Just my storage and a bunch of photogenic insulators. Hardwiring it all to just wires is a lot better than constantly disconnecting through the end gates. Still not sure why that was happening. But with my 5-minute break over and with the lapis bees, I now had the ability to make diamond bees, breeding lapis and ender bees together. Don't ask me how that works. I slapped the new diamond bees in an incubator, waited a bit, then put the new diamond bee into a hive. It used a diamond block to flower, but free diamonds is free diamonds. I spent a lot more time breeding diamond bees than made some productive bee speed upgrades for my breeding. The breeding took like 5 minutes or something per bee, which was way too slow with how many bees I wanted. And speaking of breeding, I set emerald bees to breed, then made a nether brick nest for magmatic bees. Using a magma cream on the nest, it spawned a magmatic bee. After getting this magmatic bee, I set up a small refined storage unit up for my bee house. Didn't really need it, but it helped with organization. I did this while waiting on a nomad bee, which had a chance to move into a nest that an ashy mining bee was inhabiting. It took a while, a lot longer than I would have liked. But while waiting for it, I bred up some gold bees. I then sat AFK for about an hour to wait on nomad bees, and fortunately, when I returned, there were some nomad bees that stole the other nests. They were really small, but needed for new bees, like the blazing bee, which made blaze rods. They were bred with magmatic bees and nomad bees. I then needed some ender pearls, so I used the pearls I had to craft a simulator upgrade for my hives, so that way I could put ender bees in hives. This made it so bees would actually never leave their hives, and instead simulate flowering on the feeding slab or block in front of them. Ender bees love to teleport, but instead of making the anti-teleport upgrade, I went a step further for the better version that applies to all bees. I'd be slowly adding these to every hive I make to increase efficiency. I also bred up a coal and steel bee because completionist, then made a soul sand nest as I needed gas tiers to refight the ender dragon, as one of the big materials I needed to finish this mod was dragon's breath. Unfortunately for me, I had a whopping 0 tiers. So I turned to nether exploration, hoping to kill some ghasts. I did find quite a lot of structures and loot and killed a number of ghasts, but only returned home with 2 tiers. I used a tier on a soul sand nest, and out popped a ghostly bee 20 minutes later. This bee was kinda awful, as its combs only had a 5% chance to make a gas tier. A real bummer. Refighting the dragon would have to wait. In the meantime, I made a new hut for comb processing. As of now, I had been just letting the combs stock up and processing them whenever I needed the materials. I had several thousand diamond combs just sitting around. So I used pipes to move the combs into their own individual drawers, where they would then go into a powered centrifuge for processing, then into my storage. For blazing combs, I needed a crafter from RF Tools, one of my favorite modded items, to craft the combs into comb blocks before processing. If just the combs for the blazing bee were processed, it would make blaze powder, but I wanted the rods, which came from the blocks of comb. Easy setup though. The issue that I ran into at the start was that each comb processed made liquid honey, and each centrifuge acted like a pipe, moving all liquid honey to a single centrifuge. But the real issue was that ender comb processing made liquid chorus, and if a centrifuge that doesn't make liquid chorus got liquid chorus stuck inside of it, the centrifuge just shut off. I had to make many refined storage importers, one for each centrifuge, to push the liquid into my storage instead, freeing up the internal storages on the centrifuge. I did have to make a large fluid disk for my storage, the 10024K part. It was very quickly filling up, but I'd make more fluid storage parts over time. A problem for later. Could have trashed all the honey, but I'm a hoarder. Speaking of hoards, I made my first netherite bee by giving a diamond bee a netherite block. This bee produced netherite scrap, fair and balanced. To then get all the modium bees, I needed withered bees, which needed skeleton bees. To get these skeleton bees, I placed a few hives in total darkness. Skeletal bees and zombie bees would move in over time. So while I waited, I upgraded my furnaces all the way to netherite. This cut the cook time down to almost nothing, which was very ideal. Afterwards, and with a little bit of AFKing, I checked my skeletal beehives and found some inside. I slurped them out using simulator upgrades, then gave some of them wither roses, changing them into withered bees. With the withered bee, I could use it and an ancient bee, which is the netherite one, to breed up all the modium bees. I started the breeding, then turned to my next task, Dragon's Breath. Thought I forgot, did ya? I went to hostile neural networks for this, as I could get Dragon's Breath from it. I did finally have enough gas tiers by now to make 2 sets of end crystals, but first I made a model framework and a deep learner from hostile neural networks. I could right click a mob with the model framework to make a model of the mob. When placed in the deep learner, kills leveled up the module. I could use the module to make loot. I needed to kill the dragon twice more to get its model leveled up enough to where it could make loot, so I did that. After killing the dragon twice, I made a simulation chamber and a loot fabricator. The simulation chamber simulated kills and gave a loot module based on a successful simulated death. The loot fabricator allowed me to use that module to make loot, in this case, Dragon's Breath. With the Dragon's Breath, I made a few obsidian nests so I can get draconic bees, needed to complete the mod and to get bees of vibranium and unobtainium. And now for something completely different, mystical agriculture. I moved my phytogenic insulator setup around, removing any seed that I could have a bee for and converting all of it to inferium production. I got a crafter from RF Tools for a new setup, then manually crafted insanium, using 4 of it to make a master infusion crystal, which had no durability so it could be used infinitely. With the RF Tools crafter, I set it up to automatically convert any essence made into their higher versions, all the way up to insanium. I could then just let it run as I did other stuff, and come back later when I needed the insanium. Now, we resume our regularly scheduled beegram. I bred up some quarry bees, which are bees that don't make combs, but instead make the resource that you place in their feeding slabs. It's a really good way to get sand and clay, which I was pretty low on always. I then started to breed up vibranium bees, as I was too lazy to mine for a bunch of vibranium. The vibranium ore usually spawns high in the nether, but that's too much work, so I got the bees instead. I didn't have a lot of vibranium, but just enough to make the bees and have them flower on a block of vibranium. I then shot out a new building with my schematic cannon, which was going to be for blood magic later. It was big enough to house a full altar when I got it to max, but of course I forgot space for the pylons to the dimensions. Happens. Back to bees. I wanted unobtainium, so I searched many highlands biomes for some. I did finally find some ore, but before mining it, I used experience essence from mystical agriculture and some gold to make fortune books through mystical agriculture. I got up to fortune 5, which allowed 4 ore to become 11, and I then got 6 more ore, with the quest reward giving me another ore. I doubled it to 34 with an ore hammer, then smelted it and used all I could to breed up unobtainium bees. I fortunately had enough to make 10 bees, which is what I wanted for now, and enough left over from them to flower. I'd let 5 chill in storage for now though. With the unobtainium ingots obtained, my next task was to get the template, which was in hell. Not really, but close enough to hell. The other dimension, which was accessed by placing a teleport pad in the nether. I wasn't quite ready for the dungeon there, but I needed a stone to duplicate vibranium templates. I upgraded everything I had to vibranium, then remembered something. I still haven't killed the wither. So I went and did that, going to the mining dimension to fight it in the deep slate layer, using the good old vanilla trick. It went down without much trouble, which was good. After a few fights, I was able to make nether star seeds for mystical agriculture, as there is no bee for nether stars, unfortunately. So into the fight it goes. To procrastinate, I wanted to explore the end, but it wasn't fun to bridge everywhere. My solution was to make a flight attunement through mystical agriculture, which gave creative flight. It did require nether stars, but I now had a ton. I could put it into armor from this mod, so I crafted all the way up to supremium armor and slapped the augment on. I now had creative flight, which was cool. It made exploring the end very easy. The only real notable things I got from end exploring was an elytra, a vampire glove, and some legendary items that I could break apart with apotheosis. The vampiric glove was especially a nice find as it gave my weapons lifesteal. With the absolute fresh health as the other dungeon, I'd absolutely need the lifesteal. With this vampiric glove, I went into the other, intending on locating the structures within, the dungeon and the pyramid. I was able to locate both and they were actually kind of close to each other, and I tried to use a mob swab on a piglich, which is the final boss of the All the Mods progression, but it didn't work, which makes sense. I then tried to kill one of the pigliches, but I was doing like 10 damage a swing, and it has 9,999 health, so I just left, going right to the dungeon. And when I say this dungeon is hell, I do mean hell, with Evoker and Vindicator spawners cranked up to the absolute maximum they could be. It gets pretty chaotic in here. I really don't recommend going in here on a server, as you will crash it with the sheer number of entities that this dungeon spawns. But why was I here? The unobtainium armor template can be found in a specific room, and also loot here is crazy, with ridiculous enchanted books, easily 100 diamonds in a chest, and many nuggets of all the modium and vibranium. Is it worth going through this hell? Honestly, yeah. I ended up with over 100 totems of undying, which I really didn't need. I also did find the unobtainium template, which was the main goal besides blowing up and acting like I don't know nobody. After obtaining it, I immediately went home and upgraded my armor to the highest tier, unobtainium. Still unenchanted. I should probably fix that next time I record. Anywho, I upgraded 2 of my furnaces to allthemodium, then got to totally redoing my bee setup. The issue with how it was currently set up was that each bee module took up too much space, and that I only had 1 feeding slab for 1 hive. My redo goal was to have 3 hives per feeding slab, and 15 bees of a type per slab, except for low priority stuff like slime that can have 5 bees as a treat. While redoing, I was also breeding and growing new bees to fill up that 15 bee goal, and after a few hours, the new bee home was complete. I then started knocking out a bunch of random bees, like copper, tin, platinum, lead, coal, aluminum, and silver. In my processing hut, with all the combs I was making, it was getting a bit cluttered. I wanted to have a crafter set up to make ore blocks, then smelt the ore blocks into ingot blocks, but it was a bit too cluttered. My goal for the next episode is to redo this setup and make a new build just for comb processing. But that'll have to wait, as this video is abruptly at an end. I got everything I needed to go much further into this pack. Automation, maxed out gear that I still need to enchant, and a ton of new friends within my bee house. If you made it this far, please leave a bee pun in the comments section. I try not to add many here. Thank you all for coming and watching. Bedrock Burger, out.